Welcome to Sasquatch History Documentary Part 8. Now, in this episode, it's creeps under your toilet seat. So, be warning. I am warning you that some of the pictures and some of the stuff I'm going to show you is a little bit disgusting. You may laugh. It all depends. Like, even when I was a kid, I would laugh at such things. But I mean, each individual's different. So you may feel that some of your children wouldn't be able to handle some of this stuff. And there is a couple of a little bit gross, silly like subjects because they're mutant sewer monsters, right? So I am warning you, viewer discretion is advised. Now, this week we're going to be covering some interesting creek and smaller cryptids and tiny waters, which include sewers, toilet monsters, these sorts of things like that. I've found this fascinating since I was a kid. I'd always collect these kinds of insane stories, and I find them pretty funny to me. It's just nothing but comical, but a lot of people take this stuff, some certain things quite serious. But I have ran across some pretty hilarious stuff and have interviewed all kinds of crazy people that have, said some wild stuff. Like some of the things that are down there, it's mind-boggling over the years, some of the crazy stories. And when I say crazy people, they're not crazy at all. I mean, many of them very highly educated, all kinds of different sorts. But I just mean in the, yeah, that these stories are so out there that it's just mind-boggling. But nevertheless, we're going to be covering everything from giant mutant turds that have somehow come alive because they're festering in our city sewers, to huge gators, giant rats, lizard men, space aliens, and other creepy creeps. Such as giant mutant sewer fish of a variety of species, even sharks, to giant snakes and eels. Um, Now here, this is a smaller yet huge rat compared to some of the giant rats I'm going to be showing you, and some other creeps that will likely grip you with fear and terror, wondering what is lurking in your toilet. So viewers, beware. Beware of your fannies, that is. So, anyways, here's this big legendary monster over here. He's 18 inches long there. And these photos were posted for educational purposes here. I just want to give you some a good laugh. I have no idea where some of these come from and stuff like that, but different people post them and stuff like that. So pretty entertaining. Now, right here, as I mentioned, my other videos about my old man, he had witnessed this giant rat, and it was bigger than about our 2.5 foot long dog there. So yeah, we had not a really big dog or a super small one either. It was kind of in between, I guess, it does, monsters like this below verify that, in decades of collecting these stories, that conclusion that giant rats actually do exist. Now, here's some different posted rat monsters. Now, this one was called Big Bag Daddy Jr. I like that name. That's pretty funny. Now, I have no idea of the authenticity of this or where this even comes from. As far as I know, it could have been here at our local Dow's Lake or something, or maybe part of some Rotten Ronnie's dinner or something. But it was claimed that it was, was some kind of food for these terrorists here, and this is claimed to be taken in Iran. So I don't really know, but it's one luckily thing over here, at least us North Americans and many other places in England and stuff like that, we have a lot of fat cats out there, including stuff like the Exmoor beast and things like that. So I guarantee you these terrorist rats would be running with fear from some of the size of them. Nevertheless, some of these creepy creeps actually do exist. Could you imagine something like that running past you? Anyways, there's actually way better. So now, here's this giant New York sewer monster rat shows again that my old man's stories was likely true, because this was in the same kind of area right in the hoods here. And this guy here, and it shows you don't be messing around with the hood, not even if you're a big rat. So he conveniently had some kind of a pitchfork with him, and he was raring to go, and he got this big monster. I don't really know exactly where this guy caught this, but apparently it was in New York someplace. So it looks like Quite the crazy creature here. Now, this is my absolute most favorite urban funny legend I've ever heard, and this is the most ridiculous story. But anyways, I'm gonna try and give you the basic facts of it. In the 1940s. It mentions about this 1930s, 40s, somewhere in there. It mentions a 4 foot Mexican rat that would go up a toilet and was biting prisoners in the ass and their other unmentionables. So the prisoners had enough of this and started boycotting and bugging the guards and stuff like that. And so, anyways, they decided they paid off this Mexican guard to smuggle them in some hooks and line to see if they could finally get rid of this terrible pacarana, as they called it. So, legend has it that they threaded on burritos or some kind of food onto there, some kind of Spanish food, and chucked it down into the toilet. And they had some kind of large piece of cork as a float. And they floated down and waited there for a while for a bite. And about an hour later, all of a sudden, the float shoots down there, and Pedro hooks into him there, and he gets this 3 foot, pretty decent monster. But they were convinced that that wasn't the big beast, so they let him go here, as you can see in this silly depiction. But nevertheless, then so after they let him go. Of course, just before around the stroke of midnight, I mean, what other time would it be? Anyways, his line started peeling off the spool at a tremendous speed. So then Pedro set the hook into this vicious beast, and he pulled it so hard and near cut his hand off on the first big run of the battle. The battle ensued as he let the line thread through his hands, and he almost ran out of line many times while he was playing this giant beast. Suddenly, the line broke and large bubbles, started coming up the toilet, and the line came back up the toilet, and he was gone. So, luckily, after that, no more giant rat was reported attacking Pedro and his mariachi crew or any of their homeboys. So, but still, the giant rat's footprint, sounds were walking could be heard for years, scurrying up and down through the prison, as well as sometimes bubbles in the john and a shiny shadow thought to be the hook still in the horrendous jaws of this terrible Pacarana. So, absolutely the silliest, most funniest story that's probably near out there of an urban. But here's one that's not an urban legend for sure. Here's Big Ratzilla here. And these monsters are being caught all over the place now with these cell phones and all this kind of stuff from London, England to sewers of France, as well as, of course, Mexico, there with poor Pedro and his mariachi crew, to New York, to even Canada, such as Montreal reports, Quebec City, to even our local canal here with giant rat stories, as well as across the globe, to Russia, China, from Africa to Baghdad. So near all across the world, urban legends of giant rats exist. Now, as a for instance, this is one of many, many people that I've interviewed over the years about this. I met a woman that watched this giant rat walk past her that was larger than an adult cat, that was so large it was walking on a road and much higher than the curb, which are very high in the area she was in compared to the typical cities, and was for sure a monster of a rat. She suspected it was over 3 feet long, and probably due to the abundance of McD's poutine there in Montreal, containers, laying all over the place. That might have been the cause of this monster beast to get supersized. Yeah, but nevertheless, she was absolutely petrified of it, and some fellow yanked her because they were actually on the edge of the street and they were kids, and the fellow kind of yanked her off onto the curb because when he seen it coming, it freaked him out in terror and kind of thought it was going to be attacking at them. So, anyways, this thing was quite the monster there. So it's very interesting, but that's just one of so over the ages. Now, of course, newspapers love terror stories, and there's nothing can cause more fear than terror in your toilet. The thought of some mutant monsters, such as the mutant of an English beast, like this one here, crawling up to bite you in the muffin or your boys. Well, that's a pretty terrifying thought. So I bet you after watching this show there, you'll be looking in the john before you sit for bubbles or other telltale signs, or getting yourself some heavy duty fishing line. So here's some other monster rats here. This giant rat was caught in Asia. Um, and so it shows like true monsters like this. Now look at this one here. Another I forget which one. This one that they had some name for him. Yeah, Rat Squatch. There was one of his nicknames. Look at the size of that behemoth. I mean, now you know these stories of cats and dogs and stuff like that. I mean, some of these actually do have some basis to them. Now, the Dow's Lake monster. Back in the '70s, I met this Asian fellow, and he was along the Dow's Lake there, and he was angling away, and he had one of those old cane poles and stuff, and we got talking, and he could speak somewhat English, but anyways, I could understand most of the stuff. We didn't have that much of an issue conversing back and forth, and he had mentioned that we started talking about big fish and stuff, and then he said that he had saw witnessed this giant rat come out of Dow's Lake, and he said that it was bigger than his dog. Okay, like I mean, it was really huge, and he suspected that it was at least about 4 feet in length. And so I just thought this was to me. I have seen the odd, of course, in many places around the world, of different places I've traveled through North America and stuff like that, where I have actually myself ran across the odd big rat running across some place you're walking or whatever, stuff like that. So I've seen a few pretty big ones myself, including I took a picture of a pretty huge one I found floating dead in one of our water systems. But I mean, we don't have an infestation of them like you would in other places. I mean, so to me, this was like pretty crazy sounding. So I kept asking more questions, and I kept asking, did it have a flat tail? And I was trying to think out, maybe you saw an otter or a beaver, possibly stuff like that. So but anyways, he was very adamant about it. So who knows? Maybe the Dow's Lake monster actually does still exist. But another one here, I met a man who worked in a grain factory, and he said it was common for rats to be much bigger than a typical cat, some reaching near 4 feet in length, that he's seen in this greenery up around Thunder Bay and stuff. So absolutely fascinating. Another story I got in Renfrew, local stories around the Ottawa region. They were fixing up some kind of arena, and often workers would shudder with fear running from these 3 to 4 foot giant monster rats. And I mean, this place apparently was really, really old, and God knows how much stuff was laying underneath there from all these people eating, popcorn and crap for, yeah, decades and stuff like that. And it started getting a little bit dirty, as some old buildings do, and starting to fall in disrepair. So they fix it all up, and it's beautiful now. But at the time, apparently there was quite the monster rats in there. Um, now, myself personally, one I witnessed ages ago was in the old rat hole, or what we called the Rialto Theater on Bank Street here in our local Ottawa. And I was on this date with this cute little redhead, and we went out. And back in those days, you could see a bunch of movies all day for like 50 cents and crap like that. It was even cheaper before that, but yeah, back around that time, I think it was about 50, 75 cents or something. So, anyways, we went down there, and I got her a big thing of popcorn and stuff like that. We were sitting there, and started smooching away, as a young couple would do, and not paying attention to anything in the movie. But nevertheless, all of a sudden you heard this whoosh, like this, and I felt the popcorn bucket kind of just like shake, and both of us, we looked down, and I mean, this rat was gigantic, man. It was absolutely at least about 2 feet in length. Absolutely, she screeched with this utter screech that was just absolutely crazy. I jumped, so I was just about as scared as she was, if not more so. But because I don't, I'm not, even though I like them at a distance, yeah, they're a funky, cool creature, and all animals deserve to have a life and stuff like that. But I mean, you gotta admit that's pretty scary looking. So I don't certainly want them too close to me. But anyways, so when I kind of jumped like that, it kind of the rat scattered away from the box and just kept scurrying down the one of the pathways there. And I'll tell you, man, she for the rest of the movie, we were so stupid. We were young, didn't even think of leaving. Actually, so just actually stayed there, and I just kept watching the film we were talking about. But we kept looking down, and oh, she near kissed me to death for crying out loud, and hugged me to death for the rest of the movie. So for in my end, it ended up turning out not too bad of a scene, but but nevertheless. So then I got to thinking about it later, and I said, boy, that girl must have really quite liked me there for her to willing to be sit still in this theater after you've seen a giant rat. So but I never thought about that kind of stuff back then. But I mean, as I'm older and you reflect, I must admit she must have quite been shying with me. So, but which I was with her as well. It's too bad, but she moved or something, her family and stuff. So, but things happen. But anyway, um, another time. Um, there's so many of these. I mean, it's just so crazy. Like I met this other fellow there, and he was telling me this wild story. Apparently, there's some kind of like tunnel that was built underneath our Ottawa River that was made ages ago to for some kind of escape routes for big dignitaries and stuff. So, anyways, apparently a part of it fell through or something, and they were doing some kind of repairs on it, and this kid. A bunch of kids fell down into this hole or something. They jumped down somehow, and they just wanted to see what was in there. They didn't know, and so, anyways, they kept walking along, and apparently this thing could just seem to keep lasting forever and ever and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, they come around this bend, and they're just going straight down, and this gigantic rat was just, and they said it was like huge, like a great big giant cat, and it was just sitting there guarding the tunnel and staring at them. So that they just freaked out, and they started walking backwards, and then started running, and took off. And then when they got back up, one jumped on the other one's shoulders, and somehow they all got them up, and they left. But anyways, it just so maybe that was some kind of maybe they had secret rat guardians down there to protect just in case somebody's trying to get somebody in the parliament buildings. But nevertheless, apparently it's some kind of giant tunnel or something like that. So very entertaining. But I've heard of this after this that apparently this is fairly common knowledge across. So I'm not saying anything a big secret here, but it's some kind of tunnel they had built ages ago, and there was some other ones too. There was another tunnel that they built around wartime. They were worried some kind of bunker or something that's abandoned now. I forget the name of it, but these kinds of stuff like that. So all cities have these kinds of funny, weird things. They used to have as well around there that I used to get collect big rat stories from the odd time. Was they had this lovers lane, and these army guys would be sneaking in with their squeeze, or maybe somebody having an affair, all these kinds of, you know what I mean, or bringing in a lady of the night, this kinds of stuff. And they would go in this secret lovers lane near our parliament buildings and go down there and do, oh my goodness, they might even kiss or more, but whatever they were doing down there, let's say, right? Apparently, big rats, because they would leave garbage, I guess, bringing the lady food and stuff like that. A lot of stuff would be left around there, and nobody was really cleaning it up because it wasn't like an official sort of a thing. So, I guess the rats started enjoying that sort of stuff like that, and uh, one of old relative of mine told me this wild story about some fellow that he knew that had went in there, and he was sneaking in with this little lady before they were married and stuff like that, and they wanted to do some smooching down in some private area, and this apparently like gigantic rat, as they were just about to be smooching, came right up and jumped right up on their little bench thing that they were sitting on, and just terrified them with fear, and they thought it was like over 3 feet long, sort of an idea, right? So these kinds of crazy stories are all over the place. Now, here's an interesting one. Like Now, during the Middle Ages, it was common for people in England to claim that their children were dragged off by giant rats. Now, even though it's disgusting, this was the Black Plague time and all this kinds of stuff like that. And I mean, some of these monsters, I mean, you'd have to be a gigantic rat to be able to actually carry a child off. I mean, that you'd have to be huge. So, can you imagine? That must have been a terrifying. I've never heard of this in modern times, but apparently there was quite the porkers back in the day there, and that might, and actually around that time, the king had made some passed some law about releasing the cats and not bothering them and stuff like that. And this helped. If it wasn't for the cats, the bubonic plague would have been the plague of death, black plague they called it, stuff like that. And people would have, you know what I mean? That would have been probably about it. It killed more people than just about near anything out there. So now, here's a reported giant rat, a chupacabra above, depending on your story. But anyways, it was supposedly taken near some sewer here in North Carolina. Now, I can 100% tell you what that is. I did a project on them. It was in late grade three, and it's the mighty capybara, which is the world's largest rodent, and it comes from South America. And its main enemies, of course, is the big googly snakes floating around in South America that wouldn't mind having poor capybara there for lunch. So, but they're actually totally harmless. They're vegetarian like things, and they're not going to be coming running up and biting you here like big Mister Swedish Meatball here on the right hand side. So, but now other creeps in the sewers. These are really funny stuff. There was these devil swine in England, and these cryptid oinkers would cause havoc to England mostly in the 1800s, although few rare reports even to modern times persist. And it was reported at the beginning that there was at least at one time these monster black mutant pigs that lived in groups in the underground sewers in England, and also similar stories you can find in China and Japan and the United States. So it's not the only ones, but this one was particular, like a big legend that lasts a long time up until today's standards, while the rest are just kind of a one, two time sighting sort of thing. Now, these awakening meanness terrorize the locals there and sewer workers. Reportedly huge in stature and in groups and vicious with wild boar like roaring, winking sounds, blood curdling in the night. So interesting. You get these tales of the around the globe pretty well from time to time of these bizarre, likely sort of things, But could they be true to a degree? Pigs like slop, and possibly from time to time some escape and end up wandering into some open sewer area and using it and other areas as some kind of feeding or hiding area. Even photos of elusive sewer pigs do exist. Like I found one called Jazlamar, and he was some kind of Pakistani or Indian pig that apparently was pictured taken out of coming out of some sewer or eaten in a sewer or something. Pretty interesting. But all you would need, though, I mean, in all reality, I suppose, would be a few pregnant female pigs to wander into a sewer, and all of a sudden you have like the Brady Bunch, and this could have kept the legend of winking terrors continuing for decades to come. Like these days, it's Grosvenor Square and Hyde Park, as well as the Hampstead sewers, is said to be still inhabited by these mutant black porkers from hell. Yeah, so Kramer might have been right with the half pig man, half pig and half man warriors there that the government was developing. So yes, and there's many other legends out there, like in New Kensington, Pennsylvania, in 1981, a mutant lizard man. He was 4 feet tall. Was witnessed leaving a sewer, and the young boys chased it, and one grabbed its tail, and then it screamed a horrific screech, which startled the boy, and then he let it go. It then proceeded to go back down another sewer hole. That there you have a bunch of kids chasing this poor lizard man down down in our local the local sewer there. So pretty interesting. Now, interestingly, in the same area, a bunch of miners were attacked in the 1940s by some alien lizard man killing. And even some of them, or at least they were never found anyway, so it was presumed that they were killed by this deadly lizard man down there. So, very interesting. And this goes to show that if man keeps flushing bizarre combinations of things down our toilets and into our mine shafts and things like that, it's likely we may all be taken over by eventually some mutant new race that will rule the sewer underworld and may come up into ours and try and take us over. Like, what if a bacteria, as a for instance, attached to a diaper, as a for instance, and then maybe a bag of marshmallows floated in? And they somehow, all congealed together and somehow started becoming this new kind of life form where they were using the diaper as some kind of body or host of some sort, and they become like a new living species. And they would look similar to a marshmallow man, as for instance, could you imagine a slow-growing giant Venus flytrap as a possibility? So let's say somebody flushes down some Venus flytrap seeds, and somehow these things miraculously grow like that silverweed that I was mentioning there, and they would start mutating and getting gigantic, eating all the bugs and giant rats down there and this kinds of stuff, and it might mutate over the ages. So I mean, stop the madness, people. Seriously, I mean, stop. Use the John for its purpose. Go into the John, and for no other reason. Okay. Oh, kidding aside here, there's so many interesting other crazy stuff. I think I actually have an answer for this. I didn't see this story until more recent times, but it's very interesting. There was this living like blob that they found down in this sewer, and it looks like it breathes back and forth. And I mean, lots of people seem to speculate different things, like some kind of worm-like creatures, and but there's different other people that show exactly that that couldn't really likely be, and things like that. So there's a lot of theories out there, but I haven't seen this one, and I just happened to have run across this. So to me, I think it may be solved. I might have solved it here and solved this mystery. So basically, you'll find occurring in the Ottawa River, even occasionally in some other bodies of water. I fished around the North America and stuff like that, and it's this peculiar sort of a jelly-like mass that, in rare conditions, sometimes can get gigantic. Like I saw one in the Ottawa River that was at least, I'd say, about 10 feet long and about maybe 4 to 5 feet wide of a blob of this stuff. And it was all congealed together. So I guess it's like a bunch of them all, and they kind of glue together and stuff. And they can be slightly different colors. They have these clear jelly like substance that you kind of, it's weird. It's got a strange texture to this stuff. It's just, and some people have actually mistaken this stuff as for a lake monster, because when it gets drifting in a big group, it's floating along and the wind's pushing it. It kind of make look like a back or some kind of mysterious thing. But I mean, you'd have to be really far away not to realize that it's because, I mean, I've ran across them quite a few times now, and I never thought one of them was lake monster. I instantly looked like a dead big mopping carpet of almost like moss, except it's this weird jelly-like substance. But anyways, its Latin name is called it's hard to pronounce some of these things, but Pectinatella magnifica. Okay, and now, from my own personal experience, I've seen them fairly different kinds of colors sometimes. Depending on the water clarity and stuff like that, they may absorb some of the natural tannic, more dark water or stuff like that. So some might be darker, lighter, that sort of thing. And so it's possible. I've never heard of these things in a sewer before, but maybe some river overflowed, or somehow, if there is a river near that system, I don't know this, I haven't looked that up, but just a thought, or a creek or any kinds of stuff like that. If somehow water push some of this mass up somehow from a river or something like that, and happen to get somehow into a sewer, or whatever the case, or somehow just naturally it started occurring in there. I don't know if that's possible, whatever, but I guess it could be. It happens in normal water and lakes and rivers and stuff. So, but whatever the case, it could be just a big blob of that, and because it's so filthy down there with all the sewer-like substances and stuff, it may take on even a darker color than I've ever seen before. But it acts and looks very similar, exactly the same kind of that weird, creepy jelly-like sort of stuff. So it's just another possibility. I can't guarantee you that's what it is, but I bet you if somebody tested that, that would be my guess. So, because some of these other theories that are out there doesn't make any sense. It doesn't look like these tube-like worms or some of the other things that they're thing. And I don't believe the main popular theory is, of course, it's a living turd that's now come to life, sort of things. I don't particularly believe that one, but it's that's pretty funny stuff. I must admit. So, anyways, nevertheless, we'll get away from that pretty gross. Now, the old legendary alligators in the sewers. Well, this is fun stuff here. This is great stuff. I've been studying this since as a tiny kid. Absolutely love it. My old man would tell me these funny stories about these kinds of stuff like that, and he told me that he had known some construction worker that used to work down in the sewers and stuff like that, and that he had saw this gigantic alligator, and he said that it was an albino and it was about 10 feet long, and I absolutely loved it. So I all the time I've always looked for these kinds of funny, entertaining stories to me, but nevertheless, they actually are based on somewhat of a fact that it is possible that these things do occur. And so, anyways, these uh, poor sewer workers there. Could you imagine, like in this depiction here, having to dive in the sludge to recover some kind of equipment or something's broken down there? You got to fix pipes or whatever, and the poor diver ends up being the lunch of the Bronx Nest monster there. So, I mean, it is true. There's some wild stuff down in these sewers. So see here, as a, for instance, here's an old clipping of a newspaper article: "Alligator found in Uptown Sewer," and it was also used shoveling snow into manhole. See the animal churning in icy water. Now, the story I've gotten is that it was an albino, but then I've also heard the same kind of story from Australia that there was some kind of albino alligator crocodile that was caught somehow with some kind of a noose through the sewer hole, and they dragged it up. So there seems to be some confusion here if there actually is two different separate stories. Is this somehow one's based on the other or something? I don't know, but I mean, it's weird. They're almost identical, but they're supposedly in different places, right? So it's just interesting, and they're both quite old. That's all I know. But nevertheless, it just in this one here, they had apparently had lassoed it, by the kids. And in one book called The World Beneath the City, and it was written in 1958, the guy mentions about sewer inspectors all mentioning run-ins with gators of different size and stuff like that, and the chief decided to use poison in flood areas to trap them and blast them. Yeah, so the good old boy, went down in there and, brought their Uzis or whatever that they had with them, sort of idea. And they made sure that these killer gators were going to be stopped from going up your toilet. Yeah, so pretty brave dudes there. I got to give them that. And they thought they got rid of them all, but still sightings persist. Now, modern reports are not as that uncommon, actually, and even videos and films of gators found in lakes that are right nearby or little rivers, stuff like that. In fact, like a beaver showed up in one of the more dirtier rivers of in Detroit and stuff like that. That they hadn't seen around there in ages. I mean, things just can appear. It's very strange how it can work, but sometimes that you'll find things that shouldn't be around there, but maybe somebody let like some pets, and somehow they actually do survive if there's enough food, someplace. Possibly warm enough that they can, in the winter months, if it's a cooler climate, to somehow half hibernate or whatever, or at least survive through it somewhat. And maybe that's why that alligator was so sluggish because it was so cold. But maybe after time, maybe they can build immunity, in there. Who knows? I mean, it's just interesting though. But another giant in New York. In 2013, and it was 100% a fact. It was eating dogs, and when they finally caught this sewer beast, they had to get him, yank him out of this sewer hole, and it ended up it also had inside of him some kind of probably knockoff Rolex watch or some sort or whatever it was, but luckily no hand or anything like that. So whoever it was, it also lost some kind of watch. So this thing was eating everything in sight. So quite interesting. Uh, Now, this one is really creepy. I have a couple of bizarre people I've interviewed of different stuff that have told me some pretty bizarre, wild tales with some giant insects and stuff like that. But this one's really interesting. In Tokyo, Japan, in the 1970s, these workers were fixing a sewer area, and they ran across a giant web that was around 6 feet or so, possibly even longer, that had even adult rats and huge insects in it. And it was showing that the spider even ate these huge rodents. Like, I mean, it just totally dissolved them all and stuff like that. So, what's very interesting though is that they also found like some kind of weird tunnel like thing, and they found these giant spider poop. Now, this poop was measuring 10 centimeters. That sounds like pretty massive size spider turd there. So this may be some kind of unknown species of giant spider that lives in the your underground toilets and sewers in Tokyo, Japan. And I mean, I feel sorry for poor Larry the Mouse here. He's about to meet this unknown giant spider species. I mean, uh, yeah, I 100% believe the stories, so I think it could be very possible that such a creature could exist. Asia has some very interestingly large specimen of different kinds of insects and stuff like that, so it wouldn't be surprising to me at all. So there's a cryptid that could be caught. Me personally, I would be petrified to be having to walk through there, but I mean, I would do it as long as maybe I got I'd have to have some pretty wild guardians there around me. But anyways, that would be wild. But nevertheless, poor mouse there, he's in big trouble with that creepy thing. But these stories abound, as well as I've heard other ones of giant grasshoppers that apparently some sort of natives in different areas of Asia, they'll capture these and make them into a giant sort of a barbecued sort of like as if you were eating I don't know, like one of those, corn dogs of some sort, and they'll skewer it on some kind of piece of wood and have big Larry the giant locust there for lunch. So apparently some of these things can get gigantic, and there's reports of, tons of them leaping out of sewer grates and stuff like that. So they may be ruling the underworld down there in Japan and through Asia as well. But nevertheless, there's some wild stuff around there, boy. I'll tell you. It's very interesting the different belief systems and how people have different thoughts in different areas where you come from. I met this amazing fellow one time. He just astounded me. He was able to manage to actually really do extremely what I would say a high quality job of mastering 5 different languages in less than a year sitting here. The guy astounded me. He learned French by watching French cooking shows, and somehow he was able to pick this up. I mean, it just blew my mind that he could do this. And he then learned Italian, German, English, and some. No, actually more than that because he already knew a few because he could speak. Taiwanese, I think it was, and a couple other dialects of some kind of Asian dialect that he could speak. So I mean, this guy was quite the amazing character. So very intelligent, and he was telling me that in Mongolia and stuff like that. I started asking about, have you ever seen the Almusti? Because I wanted to know. But he lived right in a kind of in more of an industrial area of Mongolia, never really was in places like that. But he didn't personally believe that it exists, right? So, but nevertheless, it was interesting. He was fascinated by animals because he said that anywhere where he lived, you never see them. You never seen a squirrel or a chipmunk or a bird or anything. Like they would hide because, I mean, they were, going to be somebody's stew there quite quickly. So he said that it's quite astounding. He was amazed. So you would see this guy and he would run across the fields and just try and get really close up to a seagull. And, and sometimes I'd be saying now, what would you do with that seagull if you? Because I was a bit concerned. He wanted to poor Jim the seagull there to have him in his stew there. But no, he just wanted to get close up to nature there, and he said no, he wouldn't go through the effort of it. But he said if it was in his homeland, when food sources are low, anything that's hopping out there, apparently he wouldn't think nothing of eating it. So he was, but I mean, absolutely amazing individual. But it's interesting to see like how excited he would be to just walk around in these fields and enjoy our animals and stuff like that because he'd never get to see them. But I mean, interestingly though, I mean, there's giant forests there in that region, but he just because he lived in such an industrial thing and then came right across to another country, he just never had the mountain experience. That's all. Yeah, so but very interesting. But these giant insects are reported all over the world. In Africa, there's reports of giant tarantula looking beasts that will run off with even a native's children. Same story, just like the rats and the as I was mentioning when the Black Plague was on and stuff like that. Uh, there's these terrifying, creepy ones. There's a giant green spider that some army fellow had to wrestle with, and he had to use this giant sort of buck knife that he had with him, and he sliced this giant emerald green spider, and apparently this thing was just an absolute monster. And if the story was true, it sounds like it was, yeah, yeah, you know what I mean, much larger than any known spider on Earth, and was apparently in some island or something. So there's all these fascinating tales. That one I actually believe. There's something about that. There's some of these I've heard before of these giant spiders, and some of them seem to have such a good history and a long length of time that there may be something to them. I mean, I listened to many ages ago. Scientists would say that an insect can never get over a certain length. Then they'd find one bigger than that. Then they'd change that and say no, they couldn't get a bigger. So these things change. Like I mean, they found some pretty huge insects in Asia. I mean, there's this one that looks like almost like some kind of nymph of some sort. And I forget the species, what it was called, but I mean, it was just absolutely gigantic. Give you the heebie-jeebies, man. I mean, you want to talk about a creepy creature. Oh, that reminds me is kind of funny, but when I was a kid, I was walking across. Yeah, I was. I guess it was way up Saint Laurent Boulevard in our Ottawa, Ontario here, and I was coming across the Saint Laurent Boulevard, and I went across on to the other side, and just as I got up on the curb, this gigantic black thing was sitting there on the curb, and it was just like kind of slowly going along, and it had these gigantic like vulture claw like huge snappers in the front, and this sucker was like at least about 4 inches long, and it was freaking me right out. I thought it was like the world's biggest cockroach and stuff like that. So I started looking up around and stuff like that, and I finally found it. So I did solve my mystery. They're called a Japanese water beetle of some sort, And apparently they got into our country somehow ages ago. Maybe it's transported through food or things like that. And so that's what I had saw. I had another mystery for ages, and I finally just solved it in very recent years, and it's absolutely amazing because it's interesting how you can miss stuff. I went through so many hundreds of insect books, never saw this one mentioned. But what had happened was, this ages ago, I was in this boat. I was fishing with some people, and uh, one of them said, "What the heck is that thing?" And uh, he had, because he had cast it out and got his line snagged into some kind of bushy. There was a little bit of reeds on the edges of the shoreline and stuff like that. He was into that a bit, and I guess this insect somehow dropped in. But anyways, it was absolutely bizarre looking. It was absolutely huge. It was pure black with this fire dot red spot, and it was fire dot red, like real bright. Then on the underneath of it, and all had all these weird patterns and stuff like that, and these creepy big creepy legs, and it was just, it was the most weirdest thing I'd ever just ever ran across. So uh I I asked the guy, I said, "Here, look, we'll just try and capture this, and I want to study this and find out what kind of bug this is, because I've never seen anything like this in books before or stuff like that." And I didn't think I was any big entomologist here of any sort, but I still, considering I'd read so many different books about them and stuff like that, I figured at least you would have thought I would have saw one before. So I just went by that kind of basis like that. So, anyways, we get out and we start camping, and we're sitting there and we're having a kind of brought out a lunch and stuff like that, and sitting around, and these idiots there, one of them, he takes this bug, and he just thought it was funny because you got the bonfire going and stuff like that, and here he chucks it right on top of the friggin' fire. And I said, "No, no, like this, and the friggin' glass broke, and then the bug got fried." And I couldn't even really tell where it was after all the cinders, because we had to put it out and stuff like that, and it looked all fairly burnt away so much that you wouldn't know much about it anyways, even if I could find a part of it. So I just said, "Oh, that was the end of it," and I left it at that. And I kept looking in books and stuff like that, and never could find this species until just more recent time. It's called a click bug. Fascinating, and they make some kind of clicking sound, which was exactly what it was doing. And so this thing creeped me right out. I thought it was some kind of giant, like mutated cockroach looking kind of thing, and I mean, it was just absolutely gross. But here's what's interesting is I've looked at the family of these click bugs, of the different ones, and I don't see anyone exactly with this giant, big, bright red, kind of orangish, burning like spot that it had. All the other ones looked very different, so I don't know. I mean, this may not have been a full list of kind of species of click bugs, but this was over along the reed banks of the Ottawa River on the Quebec side. So if you're some kind of person interested in insects or stuff like that, there may be, if it's possible. Like I said, I don't know all the species and stuff, but it could be possible that it's an actually a known one, that may not be listed in our region at least, or stuff like that, because that's all the ones I could find. And you know uh, and I've tried quite a few times, and this is always the same kind of photos show up of them, and none of them show this exactly with this big red fiery orangish dot. So it's just interesting, but there's other ones very close, but with other colors and stuff like that. So it's definitely a click bug. That's all I can say. But so there's some pretty creepy giant insects that are probably floating around. Now, the sewer cat of England. I met a man in the 1980s that was in a park in Sussex, okay, and that's in England there. And he said he was walking by some kind of large sewer opening when he heard this growl. And inside the dark tunnel, he could see these reflective eyes, and he was sure it was some kind of a panther, and it looked to be about 3 times the size of a typical cat from what he could see of the all black object in the distance inside the a bit of the tunnel of this sewer. So, is this how the Exmoor beast and other beast cats in England hide? I mean, it is peaceful, I suppose. I mean, if they knew actually, they can swim quite well, cats. If they knew if they were going to flood or do stuff like that, they might be able to sense the pressure difference and may know how to vacate, have areas to escape quickly, stuff like that. But I mean, I suppose they could use certain sections as some kind of hunting sorts for rats to hide out there in the day to be elusive from people, that kind of stuff. Um, I mean, there's been several sharks found over the years that have even found been blocking sewer systems. Yeah, so people couldn't go to the John and stuff like that, and then it ends up being a big shark that's actually in your toilet system. That's pretty wild stuff there. So it's very interesting the amount of creatures that can get far way off and survive when people claim they can't. They can only live in salt water. It's mind-boggling. I mean, the amount of these kinds of interesting stories here. Now, here is just one of the many stories that have never been published before. One man that I interviewed, a man working in the sewers of Ottawa, and they were way up in the sewer system digging out poop stuck in some areas. And this was many decades ago, but it's extremely funny. All of a sudden, through the liquid flowing poop, they see this giant creature and it starts swimming up towards them. The workers, of course, fled with panic to the sides of the walls. And all of a sudden, one of them screamed out, thinking it was a giant alligator or lizards, because they had heard these tales of these giant alligators in the sewers. So it was even known, even way back many ages ago, probably as, somebody telling other workers, or maybe they transferred from the United States and brought the legend along or whatever. But nevertheless, these workers seem to know about giant alligators in the sewer and lizards and stuff like that. So, uh, as it got closer and they were shuddering in fear, they started shining their flashlights in the liquid sludge. And here, it ended up being the culprit. It was a giant carp, so a Cyprinius carpio, okay, estimated at about 4 feet in length, which is quite the trophy. I know a lot of people that would stand in the sludge for a 4 foot plus monsters there. So, but nevertheless, here in the swimming in the liquid poop. So this goes to show how really tough, amazingly tough these creatures really are. That they can swim up miles way up in sewers and stuff like that. It's astounding how some fish species can be quite tough. I've heard of goldfish, the same thing. Being found in people's toilets where somehow it actually swam into their toilet. I mean, absolutely bizarre. I mean, there's even underground rivers in different parts of the world and well systems and stuff where even new species of fish have been found. So there's all kinds of stuff, who knows what's mutating down in our again local sewers. But I've also personally ran across bass, muskie, even walleyes occasionally, saugers. A few muskies over 50 inches over the years at either the mouth of a sewer that's going into rivers, which is just a gross thing. And I mean, you certainly don't want to be eating them or something like that. But nevertheless, the reason why they like hanging out in spots like that is they're shooting all kinds of garbage and stuff like that. The little minnows and stuff will then start feeding off of them. Then the big boys start coming in, and then the bigger boys after those even bigger boys. So it's a whole cycle here, and it's just a natural attractant for these kinds of stuff. So there's a good fishing tip for you. Now, if you're really crazy, there's actually sewer systems that are What they are is they're actually backups of rivers, so they're not technically as bad as like a typical sewer, and you're not going to get the stench as bad and stuff like that because really all what they're for is to just help in the event of flooding. So if excess water is coming up too much, they get the sewers, and they'll also allow some runoff off the roads, so some possible contaminations can occur sometimes. But basically, they're designed for sort of things like that, and uh, the first time that I went in with this fellow ages ago, Mr. Young Me in there, quite the funny character. He was quite the fisherman there, and we liked going and fishing all over the place and stuff like that. And anyways, we get paddling in this canoe. And we end up in this a big kind of tunnel that looked like a sewer system that was leading up underneath this road that the river would pour into. So we decided for craziness just to see what adventurous could be in there, right? So we get in this place, and I'd caught fish in front of them before, but I never actually was inside of a, inside this cave-like sewer, and I mean, it was freaking me out because I was thinking, oh my God, bats and stuff like that. Just the thought of one of them landing in your hair would be enough to give anybody the heebie-jeebies. But nevertheless, so we start shining along, and it looked like this, and so I said, "Well, I'm going to see what the hell's in here, eh?" So, anyways, I whipped that in there, and bang, man, I get a smallmouth bass right away. So we start catching like bass in there and back and forth like that, and I had another rod with me there that we had for muskies and stuff like that, and I said, "Yeah, just I'll chuck it in for fun and stuff like that." I said, "This would be actually a good spot for a big muskie. The water's really high now; it's not receding, and it's way in the back, and it's a dark, kind of grimly spot, the sort of thing where they could hang out there in the day and then cruise around or whatever they wanted, or ambush maybe some big rat swimming by or whatever the case, right?" So, anyways, I keep casting in there, and this big boil just comes around as I'm bringing it right towards the canoe like that, and bang, it nails it. And it was so dark and creepy in there. When it first came up, it looked like it was almost dark like. So then I'm like, what he thinks? He said, "Oh my God, man, you got an alligator on your line like this." And I said, "No, no, it's got to be a muskie, man, like this." So then it jumped again like that, and then we got a better look at it this time and saw the shiny eye there and the green on the side of his face and stuff like that. And yeah, it definitely was a muskie. So, anyways, uh, it ended up after this titanic battle with it there, pulling us around in the friggin' canoe and stuff like that. It got the monster in, but I've had luck also with even a few huge pike over the years that were exceptionally big for the waters I was fishing in. And the same thing, any kind of creek, sewer-like systems, any kind of outpours that is pouring into lakes and rivers and stuff like that create this kind of attraction, and fish will go up them, especially at certain times of year. I've heard of all kinds of other stuff like big like catfish, carpacores. I've gotten perch. I've even seen albino crayfish in the sewer in that same spot. And it's interesting. It made me wonder, like, it seemed there was quite a few of them in there, and I just thought it was interesting because I mean, this sewer piping like system that they had built couldn't be any older than 60, 70 years sort of thing. Yet here you have groups of like white looking crayfish. It's just interesting, like as if it's possible to start becoming albino and different like quite quickly in a not that long length of time as one might think. So it's just an interesting thought. But I mean, I have seen these kinds of stuff like that. I caught an albino catfish one time years ago in the Ottawa River, and it was absolutely fascinating. And I saw another one, a rainbow trout, one time that somebody had caught that it was an albino. Absolutely beautiful creature. Um, so they're extremely rare, but they do exist, and interestingly, maybe in a dark climate, it doesn't take as long as one might think, where people start. Any of the species, whatever the case, may start to slowly develop that sort of an idea. There's a lot of interesting, like even in wells, like a lot of people don't know this, but there is recorded cases of eels sometimes reported to be over 200 to 300 years of age that have lived down in wells and things like this. And uh, it, some of the counting on them does indicate, you know what I mean, that they must have lived for an incredibly long time. Like, but if the estimates are correct, it is actually feasible that some of these creatures can actually live over a couple hundred years at least. And that's a fascinating thing. But they've actually found new species of fish down in these wells that had actually changed so much over being in this well that's 1,000 years old and stuff like that, evolved into a totally different kind of different underground species and stuff like that. So it's very interesting. So Other creeps from giant snakes to lizards of various sorts from time to time also come in. Reports such as the flush nest monster from England. Now, numerous people reported this giant snake kept coming up their toilet. And then finally, they took the report seriously, and it ended up that it was true. It was an 8 foot or so boa. Now, here's another one there they had posted with some giant rat snake of some sort there found in a sewer. There's another close-up picture of the Chupacabra there that I took a photograph of. I still am not sure what it was, but it does not have the teeth count of a wolf. It doesn't have the teeth count of a coyote and these kinds of stuff. It has different teeth count than raccoons and different things like that. So I really don't know what it was, but it had a very, very large, wide gapping mouth and extremely long fangs, as you can see. And but it has anything from like Wolverine to otter like to giant mouse like sort of look to it, sort of thing. So whatever it was very eerie to say the least. Anyways, it was way too big to be a raccoon. I've seen some pretty huge raccoons, like real big ones, and camping and stuff like that. Some of them can get gigantic if they got a lot of garbage and things like that, or if a female, when she's pregnant and stuff like that, she can be carrying a fair amount there. So they can get quite the larger size, of course, if they're pregnant and stuff like that. So, nevertheless, it could not have been one of them very different, and they don't have fangs that gigantic like that. So, I mean, whatever it was very interesting. Maybe somebody knows, but I can't. I'm used to looking at animals. I can recognize them by looking at them, but corpses of them, no. And I think it's a gross subject, but I had to do this show because I also see the kind of comedy to it a little bit, and I just wanted to tell you some funny tales there that are pretty interesting. So now, uh, now, other bizarre creatures from bats to possums from time to time are reported in the John or in our local sewers, as well, often creeks and near sewers, and some even have miniature Loch Ness monster like reports. There's been photograph taken of these kind of miniature Loch Ness monsters in Ireland, Scotland, England, United States, Canada, stuff like that. So it's Africa, where they're just small river systems, but they have a little miniature beast. I remember many moons ago. I don't know if it was based on a true story or not, but it was very cute. It was a very good show, and like I told you, I was very interested, always collecting these giant eel reports and giant this and miniature this and that kind of stuff. And so it got my attention right away. It was about this kid that there was this little pond, and he was fishing in there, and this giant eel of epic proportions, like 9, 10 feet long, sort of idea. Yeah, you know what I mean. Of course, the legendary broke his line and stuff like that, right? So. Uh, he ended up trying to capture it back and forth and the kids and all this different stuff, and finally they end up getting the monster, and but it was some cute made for TV sort of show. I could barely remember it, but it had a good kind of cute dialogue to it and stuff like that. Yeah, the kid, something like Grandpa Walton there, when he'd be after the big giant catfish down at the pond there, that kept getting bigger by the week. But he was a great actor, that fellow. Who wouldn't want a grandpa like that? He was something else. But nevertheless, I'm going to go on there. There's all kinds of other funny stories that have been told about sewer inhabitants, like apparently gangs of teenagers living under there, licking frogs to get some kind of high and stuff like that, and taking these morning glory seeds and these sorts of stuff, and cults and things like that that will use these underground sewers. For their entertainment and parties and stuff like that. Let them be. They're having a good time down there, the gang. But nevertheless, now what I was thinking is that I'd start my own company with a new invention and call it the Pooper Transducer Protector, okay, or better known as PTP. Now, from my new company, K Smell. Now, my slogan is going to be like, buy PTP before you lose your wee wee. So, it will be a pad that you can fit to your rump, and it will be adjustable to fit any size rump out there, right? And it's going to glue right to your rump cheeks. And it's going to have these kind of like protective doors, so it will protect your area but allow full non-restricting to allow you to do what you need to do with your areas, right? So then you're going to have no messy cleanup. It doesn't really touch any of that sort of stuff like that. But what's interesting about it, it's going to have a transducer. Now, the transducer is going to shoot a beam down there and give you an early warning, so that way, if the rat or giant sewer monster is coming up that toilet, at least it'll give you that bit of a warning ahead of time, warning you that beep, 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 like this. It'll start vibrating onto you, and then you'll know it's time to leap from the john instantly and get the heck out of that bathroom. And this way, 100% you'll be guaranteed, as long as you got to change the battery, though, at least about once every couple of months. And check it constantly and stuff like that, or otherwise, I mean, if the battery isn't working properly, obviously this device isn't going to work properly, and it comes with a 30-day money back guarantee there. So, but nevertheless, stay tuned there for next show. There's going to be giant lakes, giants in the lakes there, and I'm going to go on about different native to different modern and ancient reports of lake monster phenomena and different stuff like that. I'm gonna talk about, as well as UFOs and also the Grim Reaper, Wild Men continued. But now, before I go, though, there is a few more things I'm gonna cover. Another interesting phenomena you'll have is reports of people seeing space aliens coming out of sewer systems. Where they got like a little miniature flying saucer, or their little green men, or they look like some kind of little hobbit like guy, occasionally like a gnome or a troll, or these kinds of stuff. And there's even, apparent films of these little miniature flying saucers and stuff like that. And so enough witnesses out there that it makes one wonder, is there some maybe groups of miniature aliens that are living in our underground sewer systems, slime colored sort of vehicles there, and they come fly out of the sewers maybe at night. They probably have some kind of telescope. So, I mean, you would never be caught. Like, I mean, if you think about it, you would fly now underneath the sewer grate. You now shoot up in the darkness. You some kind of rod-like thing, and then it would pop the little eyeball up so they'd be able to see on the outside, or maybe they have some kind of device that they can see through even cement and stuff like that. Whatever the case. So, but it is funny. I certainly enjoy those. I was very disappointed. One was a funny one. There was supposed to be this monkey lizard man monster, and they had this great film where the toilet company had to get rid of some kind of restriction in the pipes, and this big lizard man, he comes running by, and then he looks like a monkey, and he's kind of looking at the thing, and it looks like as if he wants to eat it, maybe, but then when it makes a noise, it kind of scatters away, and it was so cute and well done, but it ended up that it was just some kind of thing to promote don't throw gross things in your toilet, and stuff like that. So great job, but it was super cute. But I was all hoping there that some giant mutated lizard is actually living down in our underground sewers. I like the idea that the poor lizard man, he's down there, yeah, and trying to enjoy his life and stuff. But all kidding aside, though, seriously, there's some pretty funny, crazy stories out there, and I mean, you got to wonder if some of them, if even one has some kind of grain of truth to it, there could be some unknown species, and maybe like monitor lizard of some sort or something that prefers to live in dark, moist caverns and places like that, like what a sewer would provide. Things like that. I mean, I suppose it's possible. I mean, some of them they couldn't survive in there for long, but I mean, others they could. It just depends on the cities, systems and stuff. But I mean, they've claimed this in New York, and many times they've apparently flushed these systems or things where they've had to let go a lot of water and flood a lot of spots that they wouldn't usually do or whatever. And when they do that, still these sightings persist right after. So it seems these creatures can probably, you know what I mean, always find some kind of solution way out and hold their breath for long periods of time, enough that maybe they could survive it in the right area or spot or stuff like that. Sure, some may die, but of course they're going to be eaten up soon by another one of them if there's more of them down there. So who knows? But again, be protecting your fanny there, and hopefully you enjoyed this pretty crazy show. So I tried to be a lot more cheery than last time. I'm sorry. I'm trying one more time to do that animal show. I'm going to do that next and redo it. I just I did I don't every time I think of the poor lions and some of these animals and how few of them left and people not really doing that much about it, it kind of gets me sometimes. But oh, and by the way, when I mention these stories from Iran, Mexico, and all that kind of stuff, I've been to Mexico. I absolutely love Spanish people. I've never been to Iran, but I absolutely, it's not nothing to do with any people's race or stuff. I'm just mentioning that in the stories, this is where these people come from, and in that first one there, that's what the guy had a caption that apparently is some kind of terrorist food, but I highly doubt this is not real. Like, I mean, it's probably real, the rat, but I mean, I don't think that story's real, but I still think it's pretty funny, so that's why I put it in here. But nevertheless, I just see the comedy aspect of it, and that's it. So I mean, no offense to any group or culture or any of these kinds of stuff, but just that is pretty funny because it does. The guy's got a mask on and he's got a giant rat with him. So I mean, yeah, what can you say? But nevertheless. So stay tuned next show there. Hopefully you enjoyed it there, and hopefully it gave you a few good laughs. But it's very entertaining. There's other things that have been reported in sewers from octopus to oh goodness, I mean some really weird stuff. Little lizards, yeah, different species of geckos, stuff like that. So who knows? I mean, there's so many stories I probably never found and stuff like that. I mean, but I just enjoy these things. I think that's pretty funny. And just the idea of how these urban legends spread and how much of them are reality or not. But even if one of these crazy stories are true, I do fully believe the big fish ones. That one's where the workers saw that giant carp. 100% that's possible. There is carp that big, that exists, as well as they can swim up sewers. I've personally, like I said, ran across the front of them in different sewer mouths and stuff like that. They will traverse these kinds of things. But again, they're not really like usually typically a sewer like you would think of. They're just like they don't. really pouring in sludge all the time. Some of them do in some places. They've not cleaned them up, but a lot of these is just like excess water and stuff like that. It's not as contaminated as one would think, but nevertheless, all these waters should be cleaned up as proper and stuff like that. But it is amazing. Fish are adaptable and can survive in even the most grossest of conditions sometimes. So, anyways, take care for now, and hopefully you enjoyed my Silly Putty show, and have a nice day. Bye now.